shocking message revealed during my husband's funeral: I'm alive. Trust no one. An incredible turn of events that shattered my world. Sarah's hands shivered as she clutched the letter, its paper crinkling under her desperate grip. The words danced before her eyes, mocking her grief-stricken reality. How could this be true? Questions bubbled like acid in her stomach, twisting her insides further into a knot of disbelief. The small-town church was filled with faces, sympathy cloaked in scrutiny, each eye a judgment waiting to unfold. She felt like a ghost, roaming a world she no longer recognized, the kind where her husband, Jake, was fondly remembered as the man of integrity and fortitude, the man who now lay encased in polished wood, surrounded by flowers and whispers. Amid the haze of sorrow, Sarah upwardly battled the funeral plans, a swirl of songs, arrangements, and favors bearing Jake's name. Each detail pulled her deeper into the quicksand of loss while she tried to keep her breath steady. She tried to focus on the loved ones passing their condolences, but their words felt hollow, and eyes filled with pity only deepened the wounds. As the days wore heavy on her shoulders, stories of Jake emerged, ones she never knew. Recalling the financial struggles he had undertaken to help the neighbors painted an image of altruism that began to crack, revealing a man who navigated secrets like a skilled thief. Before she could grasp the tangled threads of truth, the letter's message clawed at her psyche, stirring doubt like a serpent among the grass. She rocked back and forth, memories flooding her mind, moments when Jake had promised her the world, and the sunshine filled their living room with warmth. But was every smile built upon lies? Could the man she loved truly orchestrate an escape plan, then leave her to bear the mournful burden alone? Anxiety crept like a shadow, mingling her love with outrage, turning solace into a trap. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The storm clouds gathered, mirroring her turmoil as she faced the bitter scrutiny of the townspeople, every head turned as if she were on trial. Each day brought layers of an impending collapse, no matter how she masked the truth with a polite smile or neatly folded tissues. Then, Jake's estranged father arrived, a man Sarah wasn't prepared to confront. His presence was a candle amidst suffocating shadow. He spoke in hushed tones of childhood dreams, of Jake's burdens that he had carried as a child that shaped the man he became, pulling at the strings of loyalty and betrayal. Each revelation stirred angrier questions, forcing Sarah down a maze with no exit, a dark road paved with whispers of distrust. As the funeral loomed, a growing dread knotted her stomach anew. What if Jake hadn't died, but instead chose to disappear from the life they had built together? The idea slithered painfully across her heart. The implications pinned her with an unbearable weight. It was her choice, her moment, to wrestle with the truth that could either paralyze or free her. Would she bury her doubts with her husband, or dare to confront the broken shards of his legacy? As the hour approached, gripping the ominous letter, she felt time slip into a crevasse of uncertainty, leaving her teetering at the edge of revelation, and a thunderous silence gathered in the air. The church bells echoed, their somber tones vibrating in the pit of Sarah's stomach as she stood by Jake's casket. A wave of grief crashed over her, mingling confusion and fury. The world she'd known was fracturing, each crack revealing hidden narratives of deception. The letter burned in her pocket, a compass orienting her toward the unfathomable depths of betrayal. She caught sight of Jake's father speaking softly to a group of mourners, their furtive glances toward Sarah like arrows piercing the air. What they whispered about, she could only guess. But her pulse quickened at the thought their collective grief was undercut by suspicion, and she was at its eye. With a desperate breath, she stepped away from the casket, the floral fragrances turning sickly sweet in her mind. Sarah craved clarity, a guide through this cacophony of mixed emotions. If Jake truly had faked his death, she needed to confront the unthinkable, that not only had she been living with a stranger, but she was now an accomplice to her husband's greatest ruse. The world beyond the church doors beckoned, and as she pushed through, the weight of eyes followed her. Outside, the air was heavy with an impending storm, foreboding yet invigorating. It mirrored her intention to unravel the truth. She had to initiate her own investigation, to strip away Jake's polished facade and expose the unvarnished reality. In the days that followed, Sarah embarked on a quest that felt both reckless and terrifying. She rifled through their home, unearthing old boxes filled with files, dusty photos, and correspondence. Every document might hold fragments of answers, each stack a potential piece of her husband's clandestine life. A puttering printer filled the air with the scent of ink as she scanned old records, concerns brewing deep within her. The more she learned, however, the more questions emerged. Jake's business dealings, the transactions that had initially seemed mundane, spooled into intricate webs of money and associations that sent shivers up her spine. Even personal letters hinted at relationships she'd never known about, friends who were more than just acquaintances, secrets threaded into the fabric of their existence. Then there were moments of clarity, flashes that illuminated her struggles. She was not merely a grieving widow, but a woman armed with intelligence, a survivor forged in the fires of doubt. With every piece of information, her confidence grew. She began to shape her narrative instead of being bound by the pain of past truths. Each night, after combing through remnants of a life entwined with dishonesty, Sarah would stand at the window, staring out into darkness. She felt the looming confrontation with not just her husband's ghost, but the truth of her own character. Who was she when stripped of the label of devoted wife? Could she become the architect of her own destiny, unhindered by shadows? Fragments of resolve stitched together a burgeoning sense of self-worth, propelling her to be not just passive bystander but an active participant in her fate. Yet, what lay at the end of this quest? As the pieces clicked into place, she wrestled with the fear that confronting Jake, his choices, and his illicit truths could splinter her world even further. But Sarah sensed the horizon of enlightenment beckoning, a sharp calm before the impending storm. Somewhere within the depths of the letter and the lives intertwined with Jake's, she could trace the contours of her own awakening. The moment of truth was beginning to unfurl, leading to a confrontation she couldn't avoid, a face-off not only with the ghosts of her past but also with the very real threat of those who might not want the truth to emerge. Suddenly, she realized she wasn't just searching for answers. She was preparing for a battle of wills that would test everything she knew about love, loyalty, and herself. Who stood behind her door, ready to confront the very fabric of her reality? The thought sent a chill down her spine, and she knew a reckoning was at hand. The days turned into weeks, a blur of sleepless nights and frantic searches for clarity. Sarah felt as if an invisible thread was pulling her deeper into the labyrinth that was Jake's life, each discovery forging steel around her burgeoning resolve. She had taken to visiting Joe, Jake's business partner, under the pretense of offering condolences. She knew that any interaction held the potential for unearthing lost truths. On a cloudy afternoon, she found herself seated across from Joe in his sparsely decorated office. The air was thick with silence, punctuated only by the dull tick of a clock. She observed him closely, his posture, the way his hands fidgeted with a pen. Did he know more than he was letting on? That thought ignited a fire within Sarah. She had a choice now: confront him directly or play the part of the grieving widow. Jake was more than just a business associate to you, wasn't he? The words slipped out before her fear could silence her. He met her gaze, an ember of surprise flickering in his eyes. He had his secrets, but that's what made him a great partner. Secrets, she echoed, her tone suggesting her agreement with the sentiment, but inside, her heart raced. She needed to pry open that door. Did he ever mention anything about his past? Or about faking his death? Joe's expression changed, a shadow crossing his features. That's a delicate subject, Sarah. Jake was complicated, but he wouldn't do something so drastic without a good reason. A good reason. The phrase tugged at her conscience, compelling her to press on. If you knew anything about his plans, you would tell me, right? You owe that to him, and to me. Joe shifted in his seat, the tension practically palpable. It's not that simple. Jake had enemies, people who wanted him out of the picture. He may have thought this was for the best. Panic clutched her chest. Jake hadn't just been elaborate, he had put himself in danger. Each revelation painted her further into a corner, intensifying her need to act decisively. She had thought she was on a quest for truth, but perhaps it was a hunt for survival, her own truth woven into the fabric of his lies. Returning home that night, the clues danced around her mind like shadows teasing behind a curtain. She felt them intertwining, creating a tapestry of unresolved connections. Jake's disappearance, the cryptic letter, Joe's guarded responses. Something was simmering just below the surface. As she replayed the conversation in her head, a bold determination surged through her veins. She scheduled a meeting with a private investigator, anticipating the moment when she could wield truth like a weapon. She wasn't simply unraveling Jake's past, she was carving a path towards her own liberation. But what truly awaited in that meeting? Were there more secrets still lurking in the corners of this game? Sarah had read a lifetime of novels depicting heroes tracking down villains, and now, she was the heroine, stepping into a narrative of her own making. The investigator's office felt sterile, clinical, filled with files and shadows of lives previously lived. Unease simmered alongside anticipation as the investigator, a sharp-eyed man named Marcus, leaned across the desk, every inch of him emanating competence. "I can assist you in locating Jake," he said matter-of-factly, a hint of gravity in his voice. The implication hung in the air like a thundercloud about to burst. "Or, I can help you understand why he might have needed to disappear in the first place." Sudden realization washed over her. This wasn't just about Jake anymore, it was her story, her battle. But with every step forward, she also sensed the lurking dangers that threatened her newfound determination. As Sarah prepared to confront truths that could change the trajectory of her life forever, a question loomed larger than the rest: was seeking the truth worth the price she might ultimately pay? In that moment, everything shifted, and she understood this reckoning would determine not just Jake's fate, but the very essence of her own existence, and the stakes had never been higher. What answers could she unearth that would finally illuminate the path she should choose? With a deep breath, Sarah sat upright in the stark chair, absorbing the weight of Marcus's words. The sterile office, lined with muted beige walls and the faint scent of old paper, felt like a pressure cooker, ready to burst. As Marcus flipped through a file, she realized she was at the crossroad of her past and an uncertain future. "Tell me why he might have thought he needed to disappear," she urged, her voice a mixture of resolve and desperation. The intensity in her tone surprised even herself. It was as if a switch had flipped inside her, igniting a fire. "Let me start with the basics," he replied, tilting his head slightly as he sized her up. Jake was involved in ventures that generated quite a bit of money, but also attracted unsavory attention. There was talk of things not being entirely legitimate. Depending on how deep he was in, there could be more than just business as usual at play. Visions of Jake's smile flooded her mind, a stark contrast to this new, darker perspective on his life. The implications twisted in her stomach. Was this the man she thought she knew? Had he truly been living on the edge without her knowledge? Is it possible he had enemies? She asked, voice barely above a whisper, the tremor betraying her conflicted feelings. Marcus leaned back, crossing his arms. "Possible? I'd say likely. Jake might have been in deeper than you realize. If he felt threatened, disappearing would be a way to protect you or himself. Some people in this world take drastic measures. You need to ask yourself what kind of man you were married to." Each word felt heavier than the last. Was she merely the unsuspecting spouse, or did she bear part of the burden for not knowing? What did it say about her? The uncertainty began to gnaw at her, coupling with her determination. Just finding him might not be enough, she asserted. "I can't go back to living in ignorance. I need to understand why all this happened. I need to know if I was a part of it." She could see it in Marcus's eyes, the flicker of respect mingled with caution. "Then you'll need to be ready," he said. "Once we start pulling at these threads, things may get dangerous. Not only for you but for anyone connected to Jake." Sarah reveled in the intensity of the moment. This was no longer just about Jake, it was a pivotal moment for her, too. She wasn't just unearthing Jake's secrets, she was stripping away the layers of her own identity, unearthing the courage that lay dormant within. "What's the plan?" she asked, her tone sharp with determination. "I'll initiate a background investigation. We can start with the businesses he was involved in and see who else was connected. But, you need to be prepared for what we might uncover." She nodded, adrenaline coursing through her as a thought crossed her mind. "What if I want you to confront Joe?" He seemed to know more than he let on. Confronting someone like him isn't a game. You must tread carefully, Marcus warned, leaning forward. He may come at you from angles you don't expect. A chill ran down her spine, but that moment of vulnerability transformed into a shield of resolve. I've faced worse. I want to know everything. No matter the cost. With that declaration echoing in the room, she felt her strategy coalesce. The whispers of hidden truths became her battle cry. She was no longer spiraling into a descent of despair, she was climbing, searching for clarity in the chaos of deception. As they wrapped up the discussion, the gravity of her decision began to settle in. This was a battlefield, and she would be fighting not just for Jake's truth but for her rebirth. Walking out of the investigator's office, the world outside felt distant but exhilarating, the skies heavy with impending rain, an omen of the storm brewing in her life. Would she emerge from this ordeal renewed and empowered, or would the truth swallow her whole? It was time to confront the hidden corners of Jake's world, and she knew just where to start, with Joe. The time had come to face him, to uncover every secret embedded in the shadows. As she steeled herself for the confrontation, a text flashed on her phone, the brief message sparking a new wave of apprehension. Meet me tonight. I have information that could change everything. Clutching the phone, she felt a surge of fear and excitement. What could this new information reveal? Would it lead her closer to the truth or pull her deeper into the web of lies surrounding Jake's life? Sarah's heartbeat quickened as she stared at the screen of her phone, the words echoing in her mind. Trust no one. The caution sent shivers through her. She had always prided herself on being a perceptive and trusting person, but with each passing moment, that trust felt misplaced. This was not just about Jake anymore, it was about her survival in a treacherous world she never knew existed. She took a slow, deep breath and tried to steady her mind. Who could this be? Someone Jake had confided in, or perhaps a part of his life he had tried to shield her from? The urge to seek answers battled against her growing anxiety. She remembered Marcus's warning about the dangers that lay ahead. Yet, the flicker of determination sparked within her. If she was going to venture into this uncertain territory, she needed to steel herself. She had to confront not only Jake's past but her own naivety. The rain began to fall, each drop resonating against the concrete as she made her way to the dimly lit cafe where the message had instructed her to go. The familiar clinking of coffee cups and soft murmur of conversation wrapped around her like a warm blanket, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside her. Taking a seat at a corner table, she did her best to appear calm as she scanned the room, assessing each potential face. Her stomach twisted as every passing figure could either be friend or foe. Was this meeting going to bring clarity or further entrap her in a labyrinth of deception? Moments passed as she sipped her lukewarm coffee, rehearsing a mental script. This was going to be different. She wasn't the same woman who walked into Marcus's office. The flicker of resolve continued to strengthen. She would not let fear dictate her actions. Finally, a shadow crossed her line of vision. A man, mid-30s, tall with dark scruff and an air of urgency, approached her table. His eyes darted around, scanning the room before settling on her. She felt a knot in her stomach, but she maintained her composure. Sarah? He asked, a hint of recognition breaking through his nervous facade. Yes, she replied, keeping her tone steady. I'm Alex, he said, sliding into the seat opposite her without waiting for an invitation. I know it's a lot to take in, but we need to talk about Jake. An electric tension filled the space between them. Every instinct screamed at her to probe him, to peel back the layers of this stranger to uncover truths. But instead of aggression, there was something almost comforting in his intent gaze. Jake, he's alive? The words slipped out before she could catch them, and she immediately regretted her impulsiveness. How reckless it sounded, she didn't even know if she could trust him. Alex leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. He didn't plan on disappearing, Sarah. It was out of necessity. There are people looking for him, people doing things they shouldn't. He needs your help. The revelation struck her like a blow. Questions flooded her mind, but she forced herself to focus on the situation at hand. What do you mean? What's really going on? He hesitated, glancing back into the cafe, ensuring they weren't being overheard. Jake was in deep, and it's not just about business. There are serious implications and lives at stake. He went into hiding to protect you, but the truth is more complicated than you know. She tilted her head, anger rising at the implication that someone else had decided her fate before she had the chance to understand her own. Why should I believe you? Because if you want to find him, you'll need to know everything. Trust will be paramount, and the more you learn, the less illusion you'll have about who your husband truly was. The weight of his words settled heavily on her shoulders. There was so much to unravel, but she was determined to pull at every single thread. It became increasingly clear that her journey was just beginning, and sacrifices were inevitable. Well, I suppose that's why I'm here, she replied, her voice steadying. Tell me everything. As Alex began to outline the risks ahead and the shadows that lay between her and finding Jake, she felt a strange exhilaration. Would this revelation lead to newfound strength, or would it push her deeper into danger? In that moment, the question overshadowed all others. Was she ready to uncover the complete truth, no matter the cost? With every word that followed, she felt herself inch closer to either liberation or destruction. The cafe's ambience faded into a low buzz as they delved into the secrets of Jake's life. Yet in the back of her mind, a nagging thought emerged: what if this was a trap? Just before leaving, Alex dropped another bombshell. And there's something else you need to know about Joe. It's not just about what he knows, it's what he's willing to do to keep it buried. That revelation settled in the air like fog, heavy and thick, as Sarah braced herself for an impending confrontation that could change everything. The weight of the cafe's atmosphere pressed down on Sarah as Alex's words settled in. She felt both fascinated and terrified, a dizzying mixture that churned in her gut. The sense that her life was spiraling into something beyond her control turned her insides into knots. As Alex explained Jake's tumultuous connections, Sarah's mind raced to make sense of the chaos that had become her new reality. Joe is more than just a name, Alex continued, his voice low. He has a network of individuals who won't stop until they fulfill their goals. Jake knew too much, and now that information is a liability. Images of Jake, the man she thought she knew, danced in her mind. Those wholesome memories seemed so naive now, eclipsed by shadows of secrecy and danger. What exactly did he get involved with? If he's in hiding to protect me, what are his actions putting me up against? Alex met her gaze. Drugs, Sarah. Trafficking. He was always good at figuring out who to deal with and how to stay clean, but it caught up with him. What he didn't realize was that some debts don't fade easily. You need to be prepared for the worst. The realization crashed over her, the weight of her husband's choices enveloping her like a pall. Did she really know him at all? Could she have seen the signs and simply ignored them out of blind trust? With each piece of new information, her foundation shook further. Help me understand what I'm getting into. The determination in her voice surprised even herself, but she needed control in this new narrative of mind-boggling revelations. If I want to find Jake, I need to understand the truth, whatever that might mean. Alex nodded gravely. You must learn who his allies and enemies are. You'll need to dig deeper, understand the motivations behind those chasing him, those who will eventually come after you. Her heart raced, but Sarah interrupted. What do you know about Joe specifically? What's his game? He's ruthless. Requires obedience. He won't hesitate to wipe away anyone seen as a threat. And right now, you are at the top of his list. Alex's voice was steady, but his eyes flickered like he was weighing the consequences of sharing this information. Sarah inhaled deeply. So what do I do? How do I prepare myself for a confrontation with someone like him? Her professional instincts fought to emerge amidst the chaos. She couldn't afford to panic. This was no time for fear to commandeer her actions. Learn self-defense, he urged. Understand how to gather intel without alerting the wrong people. You'll need to build a network, trust me, you can't do this alone. A fire ignited within her. She could not only become reactive but proactive. The thought of who she could become, a woman capable of confronting this dangerous world, sent a shiver of determination through her. Okay, I'm in, Sarah declared, noting the shift in her own tone. She could feel the latent strength she rarely acknowledged surfacing. What's the first step? Start by going back to your life, Alex suggested. People won't expect you to change overnight. Use your normal routine to gather information. Trust carefully, and act deliberately. You'll need allies, but tread lightly. As the last echoes of their conversation faded into the ambience of the cafe, Sarah became acutely aware of the new weight of responsibility hanging over her. This was no longer just about finding Jake. It was about her own survival and rewriting her identity in stark, bold strokes. The journey she'd embarked on was fraught with uncertainty, yet she felt something new blossoming within her, a deep sense of purpose, an urge to take control of her own narrative. With newfound resolve, she stood, ready to face the unknown. However, the question loomed, would she truly be able to see through the veils of deception? As she stepped outside into the rain, the droplets mingling with her racing thoughts, she suddenly envisioned a face from her past, a friend who once held vital information about Joe. It was time to reach out, but could she trust anyone from that part of her life? Sarah took a deep breath and allowed the urgency of that question to propel her forward into a world filled with shadows, her next confrontation just a step away. The rain soaked through her clothes, biting at her skin, but Sarah barely noticed. Each droplet echoed the urgency of her mission. She moved forward, determined to piece together the fragments of her life, starting with a conversation she had almost dismissed Zoe. They hadn't spoken in years, but Zoe had connections, a life intertwined with those who hovered around the edges of legality, and she might know more than anyone about Joe. As she walked, her mind bubbled with apprehension and anticipation. What if Zoe was already too far invested in this dangerous undercurrent? Who could she trust anymore? The recollections of their friendship flicked through her head like photographs, late-night talks, shared laughter, their relentless ambition in a world that often dismissed them as mere girls with big dreams. Sarah steeled herself. The weight of her husband's secrets was a chain around her neck, but she wasn't the same woman Zoe had once known. She felt the spirit of resilience rising within her, and her pace quickened. Arriving at the familiar cafe where they used to meet, she pushed through the door. Memories flooded her senses, the aroma of rich coffee, the slight murmur of conversations. It was comforting but also haunting. Sarah spotted Zoe in a corner booth, her hair now a shade darker, her fingers tapping restlessly on the table. Zoe's eyes flickered up, recognizing Sarah instantly. The warmth drained from her expression as uncertainty settled in. Sarah, it's been a while. Too long, Sarah replied, taking a seat, her heart pounding. Is everything okay? Zoe asked, an edge creeping into her tone as she scanned the room cautiously. Sarah drew a deep breath, the weight of her own fears pushing against her chest. I need your help, Zoe. It's about Jake. At the mention of his name, Zoe stiffened. I thought he was gone. He is, but he's also not. There are things I need to uncover about Joe and the people surrounding him. As she spoke, Sarah felt raw vulnerability yet unexpected power. This was her moment to reclaim her narrative. Zoe leaned forward, intrigued. What do you know? Sarah hesitated, grappling with the enormity of her request and the trust that had long been buried under the shards of their last meeting. She needed to present this situation without inducing panic. I'm not safe. Information has come to light about Jake, about his dealings. I want to find him, and I need your expertise to navigate this world. Zoe's expression hardened as she absorbed the weight of Sarah's words. You understand who Joe is, right? Getting involved with him can be deadly. It's not just about finding Jake but also about protecting yourself. I'm aware, Sarah replied, her voice steady. But I've learned something. I'm not just a victim. I can find my way through this. Zoe's facade cracked just the slightest, revealing a flicker of respect. Then you need to learn everything you can. I can connect you with some people, but you have to promise me something. What? Sarah's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Promise you'll exercise caution. Once you tread into this world, there's no turning back. You will have to stand your ground. That's all I've ever wanted, Sarah asserted, her determination crystal clear. She felt an unshakable resolve take root, igniting her spirit to confront chaos head-on. Zoe nodded, a newfound seriousness etched on her face. All right. Let us start with the basics. You'll need to learn about Joe's network and gather intel without being detected. Your safety will depend on it. Sarah felt a rush of adrenaline. This was at the beginning of her transformation. As she planned with Zoe, the lines of fear and uncertainty began to blur into something else entirely. Remember, Sarah, Zoe said, locking eyes with her. In this world, knowledge is power, and trust is a rare commodity. Just as their conversation turned to practical strategies, Sarah's phone buzzed violently in her pocket. She pulled it out, heart racing as she glanced at the unknown number flashing on the screen. Do you expect anyone? Zoe asked, eyes sharp. No. Her. Hands trembled slightly as she answered, and the voice on the other end sent chills through her. Sarah, it was Jake. Jake? She gasped, feeling her world tilt. Where are you? Listen to me carefully. You have to trust no one. They're closer than you think. As the call ended abruptly, the room seemed to close in on her. Panic surged in her veins. Who should she trust? What danger loomed just around the corner? In that moment, all her previous plans felt fragile, crumbling under the weight of Jake's warning. A new layer of danger had emerged, but she wasn't prepared to step back. Instead, she was drawn deeper into a world that threatened to engulf her, and she framed her next steps carefully in the shadow of uncertainty. With her resolve hardening, she turned to Zoe. We need to act, and quickly. There's no time to lose. The clock was ticking down, and Sarah could feel the impending storm gathering around her. Would she be able to navigate this treacherous path, or would the fall lead her into darkness? The atmosphere in the cafe shifted, a dense fog of tension settling around Sarah and Zoe. Conversations faded into the background, their urgency consuming all sound. Sarah could feel her heart racing, blood pulsing in her ears. Jake's voice echoed in her mind, fueling her determination and intensifying her fear. She had expected complications, but not this. Her husband had vanished, and now his voice reappeared like a sedative-laced whisper in a storm. Zoe's eyes searched Sarah's, assessing the storm brewing inside her. Do you want to go now? She asked, her tone steadying the frantic cadence of Sarah's thoughts. No, we need a plan first. Refusing to let panic dictate her actions, she wrestled her racing heart into submission. I can't just rush in blind. Zoe nodded, her brow furrowing with scrutiny. You need to think about who you can trust. If Jake's warning is as serious as it sounds, then every step has to be calculated. As Zoe began outlining a strategy, Sarah fought to maintain her focus. She had spent years feeling small next to Jake's formidable presence, but this was different. She was a woman ignited by necessity and a desire to reclaim agency over her life. With every passing moment, the facade of victimhood cracked, revealing a version of herself she didn't know existed. A survivor. First, I'll reach out to my contacts, Zoe continued, pulling out her phone as if it were a weapon. They can provide background on Joe and his associates. Understand their business, their habits. This is about gathering intel and not becoming collateral damage. Sarah leaned in. I need to know everything. Who I'm up against. It can't just be a general overview. I need names, faces. Zoe paused, weighing the implications of Sarah's urgency. Fine, but you have to promise to keep your distance. You can't be a part of this world yet. You need to remain an observer. The gravity of those words settled heavily between them. As observer, Sarah felt more than just sidelined. It felt like a relinquishment of power. But she refrained from voicing her reservations. Instead, she processed the challenge lying ahead and internalized it. Understood. Just help me make sense of it all. Zoe's fingers danced over her phone screen before looking up with a determined expression. Their essay meet tomorrow night with some local players. It's informal, but I can get you in as long as you lay low. You'll listen, learn, and then we'll figure out our next steps. An unexpected thrill coursed through Sarah at the prospect. It was a risky venture, but the intangible longing for control clashed with the fear of being caught in the crossfire. It was a true test of her mettle, and she wasn't going to flinch now. "Let us do it," she said, the resolve channeling deeper into her voice. "Just remember," Zoe warned, locking eyes with her. "The more you learn, the more complicated this becomes. You might lose people you care about." The weight of those words loomed ominously over Sarah. She couldn't afford to let fear dictate her choices, nor could she ignore the realities of her life when danger lurked so closely. "I can't think about that right now," she replied softly, grappling with looming regrets and potential losses. Zoe's phone buzzed again, breaking the tension, but Sarah remained in her thoughts, considering the fragility of what she was about to undertake. What allies awaited her? What betrayals would she discover? "Get some rest," Zoe urged. "Clear your mind. Tomorrow is going to change everything." As she exited the cafe, the world outside seemed starkly different, shadows stretching longer under the streetlights. The rain had tapered into a light drizzle, mirroring the turmoil within Sarah's heart. The familiar streets now felt alien, lined with whispers of danger and choices that could alter everything. With each step, Sarah replayed Jake's message in her mind: "Trust no one." It echoed like a tattoo in her psyche. How could she move ahead while veiled in layers of uncertainty and fear? Just as she reached her car, her phone buzzed again. This time, she hesitated, bracing for more unsettling news. She lifted it slowly, reading the new message that appeared. It wasn't from Jake, yet it was just as alarming. "Meet me before the sun rises." It's about Jake. Time is running out. The invitation pulled her back into the maelstrom of risk and intrigue. Who could it be? Was this a trap or an ally? This was the tipping point she had been waiting for. Tomorrow was no longer about gathering intel, it was about survival. A new fire ignited within her. This wasn't the end, it was a wild beginning, and as Sarah drove into the night, she knew that the only person she could ultimately trust was herself. The night air was thick with uncertainty as Sarah drove toward the meeting place, the address she had painstakingly memorized from the message. The headlights pierced the darkness, illuminating fleeting glimpses of a world that felt increasingly hostile and treacherous. Each street lamp cast ghostly shadows that danced like phantoms at the edges of her consciousness, serving as reminders of her vulnerabilities. Who had sent the message? The possibilities churned in her mind like a relentless storm. Could it be a friend? A foe? The thought of Jake being alive sent a wave of conflicting emotions crashing over her, relief intertwined with a gripping fear of betrayal. Her pulse quickened at the prospect of confronting a reality she had yet to comprehend. Arriving at the dilapidated warehouse, she parked the car a few blocks away, both to avoid detection and to gather her thoughts. The cold metal of the steering wheel pressed harshly against her palm, grounding her in the moment. She glanced at herself in the mirror, taking in the reflection, a woman on the precipice of a life-altering decision. She didn't recognize the fierce determination swimming in her eyes, nor the tranquility that settled over her like a protective veil. As she approached the entrance, she replayed Zoe's advice: stay in the shadows, observe, and most importantly, protect herself. Yet, the very act of stepping out into the unknown felt extraordinary. Sarah was no longer a passive participant in her life. She had forged a path onto which she had set foot, defying the very restraints that once held her captive. The heavy door creaked open, revealing an expansive space that reeked of abandonment. A single bulb flickered precariously overhead, casting a dim haze over scattered crates and debris. She could hear the faint murmur of voices, drawing her further into the belly of the beast, towards the unknown meeting. Crouching behind a stack of crates, Sarah's heart raced as she methodically assessed the situation. A small group was gathered, their voices low and urgent. Straining to hear, she caught snippets of conversation that hinted at a world she had scarcely brushed against, the kind of world Jake had so easily navigated, and one that now felt like a tempest preparing to crash upon her. "Jake's name keeps coming up," one man said, his tone ominous. "If he's alive, we need to find him before he blabs." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. They still believed Jake was involved in a way that left her grappling with dread. What did he know? Who was involved? The gnawing question of her husband's decisions hung in the air, thickening the tension her instincts fought against. As Sarah carefully shifted her weight to better position herself for a clearer view, another voice cut through the haze, a voice she knew too well. "There's a way we can draw him out, but it's risky." Zoe's tone danced with frustration and fervor. Sarah's heart dropped. Zoe? Her cover was blown, and whatever maneuver she was concocting could put them both in life-threatening danger. Without thinking, complying with instinct, Sarah crept forward, listening intently to every word. Zoe was caught in a web of cohesion, surrounded by shadowed figures whose motives remained hidden, yet palpable. "That's not the way to do this," one of the men interjected, impatience lacing his words. "We need to exert control and take him down before he can even think about telling anyone." A knot tightened in Sarah's stomach. Control, an elusive concept she had desperately sought in her own life. Was she now witness to a plot that extended beyond the physical threats that loomed over her? Just then, a noise echoed behind her, snapping her back to the urgent realization that she was being followed. Fear blurred her ability to think clearly. Sarah turned sharply, her heart pounding as she faced the darkened hallway leading away from the warehouse. Faced with a choice that would define her path forward, she danced between flight and fight, every instinct urging her to seek safety while the voice of her deeper self clamored for confrontation. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, she bolted toward the shadows, her mind racing toward one inevitable truth: she wasn't simply reclaiming her life, she was fighting for it. And the real question loomed now: would she confront Zoe and the men, or slip away into the dark, where safety still beckoned? Only one thing was certain: all paths would lead to Jake. As she navigated the treacherous ground, Sarah felt something crystallize within her. Regardless of the risks, she was shaping her own story, one decision at a time. Would she have the courage to face the unpredictable aftermath of her choices? The answer awaited just beyond the darkness. With a deep breath, Sarah pushed through the shadows, her senses heightened and alert. The chaos of the past weeks had transformed her. A grieving widow had become a woman armed with courage and determination. She was ready to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead, even if they scared her. Staying hidden behind the crate, she carefully assessed the situation. Zoe was at the center, her face a mask of conflicting emotions while she spoke with the men surrounding her. The tension was palpable, each voice punctuated with urgency. They were discussing plans that darkened the atmosphere. Sarah's heart raced. How had everything spiraled so far out of control? She didn't know whether to confront Zoe now, risk everything, or wait for an opportune moment to expose the truth. Suddenly, one of the men mentioned Jake's name again, and panic clawed at her throat. What information did they have? Did they know he was ultimately still alive? She needed answers, but she also had to navigate this world of shadows carefully. The stakes had never been higher. Gathering her resolve, Sarah slipped silently toward the edge of the group. She clenched her fists as Zoe's dialogue became clearer. "We can't push him, but if we try to lure him out with the right bait, his family, it might just work," Zoe proposed, her tone weaving a thread of hope through the chaos. At this moment, Sarah's heart sank. Zoe was suggesting using her as leverage. The very idea turned Sarah's stomach. Could Zoe truly intend to drag her into danger to accomplish her goal? With a surge of clarity, Sarah stepped forward, revealing herself from behind the crates. "Is this what it's come to?" Her voice resonated with power, startling the gathered group enough to cause a momentary pause. She locked eyes with Zoe. "Using me to find him? Is this how far you'll go?" Zoe's expression morphed into one of surprise followed by immediate concern, and the men turned to her, faces unreadable. "Sarah! You shouldn't be here," Zoe scolded. "Neither should you, plotting like this," Sarah shot back. The fear flickering in Zoe's eyes gave Sarah her moment of strength. "What else are you hiding?" "Listen," Zoe started, but the urgency in Sarah's voice cut her off. "No. You listen to me. This is my life we're dealing with," Sarah pressed. In that instant, an undeniable strength surged within her, a recognition of her own fortitude. She had crossed into a realm she had never thought she could navigate, and it felt intoxicating. The men exchanged confused glances. "You're playing with fire, lady," one of them warned, but Sarah's fear was eclipsed by an unwavering determination. "Then I'll get burned," she replied, her voice steady. "But at least let me choose how I get burned instead of you scheming behind me." Every gaze was now fixed on her. She was no longer a pawn in their game. The power dynamics shifted as she realized she had the ability to direct the conversation. The truth had become her ally. "Tell me everything," she demanded, her chin held high. "Who are you really? And where is Jake?" The room's attention became charged with trepidation, a recognition of her strength. After a tense beat, one of the men stepped forward. "Jake is involved in something far bigger than all of us, but you deserve to know what you've stepped into," he said, his tone softening slightly. "This isn't a game. People are willing to kill for what's at stake." Every word hung heavy in the air. Sarah focused on grounding herself in the moment. This was the confrontation she had been preparing for. Not in rage or despair, but in fierce clarity. "Then get started," she said resolutely, ignoring the biting fear worming its way back into her mind. "I need to know if my husband is dead or alive. You owe me that much." The atmosphere around them shifted again. No longer did she feel like an outsider intruding on their plans. She was an integral part of this unwinding tale, her willingness to confront the reality of her life forging her into the hero of her own story, and as the details unfurled a tapestry of deception, risks, and the shadows Jake had danced with, she felt empowerment washing over her. Sarah had crossed the threshold from mere survivor to a warrior of her own narrative. This chapter was far from being closed. In fact, it was just beginning. As the meeting progressed and fragments of Jake's secrets spilled forth, Sarah listened intently, absorbing the truths meant to reshape her understanding of everything she thought she knew. With every piece revealed, her path toward Jake and her own truth became increasingly illuminated. And in that moment, the darkness that had once threatened to suffocate her began to recede. She was transforming into someone capable not only of understanding the depths of Jake's world but also of standing firm in her own resolve. Sarah realized one fundamental truth. She had an unwavering spirit. She would not stand by as victimhood wrapped its tendrils around her heart. She would rise, confront the lies, and carve out her own destiny. The strength within her emerged not just as a reaction to tragedy, but as a profound declaration of her own worth. She could not run away from the truths that lay ahead. Instead, she would embrace them with open arms. It was a pivotal shift, one that set the course for her final clash with Jake's legacy. Transformation was no longer a distant desire, it was fully manifested, unleashed by the power of truth. With renewed determination, Sarah took a deep breath and prepared to step boldly into the unknown. Her journey was just beginning. And as she did, she knew that no matter how the story unfolded from here, she would be at the center of her own narrative, a hero in a tale that only she could truly tell. Now, she was ready to reclaim her power for herself and the love that still lingered in the shadows. If you found Sarah's journey moving and empowering, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support, to witness incredible stories of personal transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. The community needs to see these empowering journeys. Comment below your thoughts. I am eager to know how you think her story will unfold. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion and understand the resilience within us all. Don't wait even one more second to spark the conversation.